Hey guys, welcome back for another week of power rankings with the Ice Hockey Aussies. It's week 15, and to get us started is myself with pick 32, and they seem to be just finding it nice and comfy at the bottom here. The Columbus Blue Jackets. I don't really see them moving off the bottom anytime soon with the way they're playing.
No, they don't move for me either. I think it's a pretty solid 32, especially with the other ones that have been in that same sort of bracket have done just a bit better. Um, and just honestly, just showing more on ice as well. I don't think Columbus has shown much on ice for a long time now. It's a bit disappointing. Probably hard for fans to watch too. You want your team to at least try, but I don't think they have that effort. But honestly, it's their season's over. I guess you just look for next season. Um, and there's not too much more you can do about it, really.
Exactly. I think, anyone, any Columbus supporter knows that their season's done. They may as well look towards potentially getting Connor Bedard if they can. Because yeah, it's just not going to turn around with the injuries they have and the performances they're putting up right now. So yeah, I mean, right now I don't think they'd be too angry about being the worst team in the league, but yeah, I think it's just queuing the rack.
Well, they,
Uh,
they need centers, so as long as they draft a center, they should be good.
Yeah, and that's it, right? Like, if you're gonna finish probably bottom three, bottom five at best, I don't think they get out of the bottom five. Looking at it, you're gonna get a pretty good draft pick. And in this year's draft, you're gonna get a reasonably good player with that as well. So even if they don't get Bedard, if they can still draft a top center, that might even be NHL ready for next season. It could go a long way to improving these guys. And then if they can pick up another center in free agency, who knows what next year can bring. But yeah, this year, put the Q in the rack, you're done.
Alrighty, on to pick 31. Team just went on the rise and they come back falling down. It's the Chicago Blackhawks. I've got
Yeah, I've
them.
got him there as well.
Yeah, moving down two positions. I think they came crashing down back to earth a little bit. The game today with Edmonton just getting just destroyed. I think that kind of
Mhm.
cemented the two position drop. They did have a good win against Calgary, which I liked, but and they did compete in the LA game, even though they only had 19 shots. But then they only have 14 shots against Vancouver, so they're not getting shots.
Yeah,
And it doesn't
nah,
matter how good or how good Patrick Kane is or was or whatever. If you're only getting 15 or something shots on average, like even your best snipers aren't going to score many.
yeah, exactly. And that was my concern with them is they couldn't get shots to the net. They struggle with any ozone time and pressure on the puck. Um, yeah, I mean they had a little bit of a nice, hey, look, here we go, we're winning a few games, but ultimately, I don't think it worries any Chicago fan that they've fallen back down. This is where they want to be right now. This is where the franchise wants to be. The players obviously aren't liking it too much, but yeah, you can't really complain too much. They're not going to do anything else, so you may as well get as good of a draft pick as possible.
Alrighty, your pick.
All right. At P30, not moving at all. They had a reasonably good week. But given the performance of another team above them, they don't move this week, and it's the Arizona Coyotes.
Yeah, it's the same for me. They don't move. Yeah, they're just looking more and more ordinary as the season progresses. Probably for the better for them. Um,
Mhm.
but Clayton Keller, he went on a big uh, goalless drought. Um, it's honestly they just haven't been competing as hard as what we've seen, and you're expecting it with the roster they have and everything, and it's what they want. But it's kind of sad to see him down at 30, considering that they were
Mhm.
playing so good. So, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
some of
I
their
mean,
season really.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, I quite liked the week. I've liked the month that they've had. They've not from the way they've been playing. I feel like they have been a lot worse than what they were, but they're losing games. They've moved all the way back down to the bottom of the table where they want to be. And then this week we saw two pretty good performances against Vegas and St. Louis. 4-1 win and a 5-0 loss. And then, not to mention, they lose to Anaheim, who they're competing with for a bottom spot. So yeah, I'm happy for them that they're losing these games. They're going down the standings and getting into the best position possible for that top pick. But I'm also liking we are still seeing the occasional game. It was great when they were performing really well game in, game out, and the compete level was insane, but it was just resulting in so many wins that you were going, guys, I don't think you want to win like
Yeah. Well,
this many games.
my concern with them is that they're getting outshot every game. Like I don't think there's a game where I've watched where I'm like, oh, they were the dominant team. Um, if it if might be competing hard, but it always seems like they're getting that kind of like, we shoot 20 but we score 3 or 4 or something like that. And that's just the way I've just been seeing it. But that does show that you're fighting hard even when you're not getting the shots. But yeah, they're getting more shots than say a team like Chicago. Um, Alrighty, I guess moving on to pick 29, the team that you mentioned that leapfrogged them, I got the Anaheim Ducks.
Yep, that's where I've got them as well. I considered going a little bit higher. They played really well this week, but just given how bad they were, I held back on moving them too far up.
Yeah, well, like to me, like I only rated one of the games like heavily, and that was the Colorado game where they won. The other two
Yep.
wins were against Arizona. One of them going to OT. Like I said with the Arizona, like the Anaheim, I don't feel like they dominated the Colorado game. It's just like they get outshot. I felt like they got a little bit outplayed a little in some parts, but they still come out with a win. Which is good credit to them. But I need to see more because it's obviously not a team that's very consistent at all at being good, especially this season.
Yeah, and they're not going to be um very good. I think this was a nice little win streak that they had, 3 wins in a row. They took advantage of a poor Arizona. But you know, they're rebuilding. I think they're quite happy. They're going to take as many um, assets as they can get at the deadline for any players that they need to move on. Add to that sort of draft pool of theirs, and then just try to bring in some more youth to try and quick start, like just move this rebuild on a bit quicker. But for now, you don't. A 3-game winning streak's great for the fans, and the fans would have been loving it. But now I think they'll fall back straight into the same thing we've been seeing all season. They're just not gonna consistently put performances up like this, and they're gonna get outplayed more often than not.
Yeah,
So
I
you
think it's
take
a
it while
pretty
you can get
solid
it.
bottom four.
Oh, for sure. And I think with the only other team I'd probably look at with that is I think Montreal will fall into that gap, especially with Cole Caulfield being out for the season.
Yep.
And well, moving on to P28. Speaking of Montreal Canadiens, um, dropping 2 spots for me. Yeah,
Alrighty. I still haven't really moved on them. I moved them down, but they're at 26 for me. Just not.
you did have them quite high.
No, I only
Um,
had them one higher than you last week. It's just
yeah.
by the looks of it, but I just don't rate the other two teams below what I've seen this week. But I see where you're going with them. Like basically, they've got one line, and then they lose 1/3 of that line. They do go 0-3 this week. OT loss against Detroit. They lose to Boston, but it's Boston. And then they 0-5 loss today, which is a big loss against Ottawa. Though
Yeah.
I'd say Ottawa's playing a bit better than they were previously. Um, I don't expect them to get those wins, honestly. And I can definitely see them going and joining that bottom four with
Yeah.
some of their star players out.
Yeah, I think it's inevitable. We saw a bit of shining light from them last week with the wins against Rangers, Winnipeg, and Toronto. But yeah, I do ultimately think that they will just crash into that bottom. That they'll become a part of that bottom five. Especially with Cole Caulfield out. I think that's a huge loss. We've spoken about it. They really were only a top line, and when you lose one of the key players in that top line, things just they're not going to go well for you. So yeah, I expect we'll continue to see them drop.
Alrighty. So team at 28 for me, I have the Vancouver Canucks not moving for me.
Yep.
Um, they
I
just
have them just one above.
Yeah, so they go win 2 out of 3 games this week, but they fade off the lower teams in Chicago and Columbus, and they lose pretty significantly, 6-1, only having 20 shots against Seattle on a back-to-back from the Blackhawks game. I don't like what I see, honestly. Um, I think one of the few players I'm liking watching their game in like Bo Horvat is one of the players that they're looking at moving, and it's kind of funny in
Yeah.
that situation. But every time I watch him, I'm liking what I'm seeing from Horvat. So, and some things from Pedersen as well. But it's kind of funny that he's one of the one they're looking at moving, and he's probably the ones that's shining the most in my eyes when I watch them. So yeah, I don't really rate their week. It's kind of like you're expected to do that this week, so that's why I don't move on them.
No, that's fair. I mean, I don't move on them either. Um, I yeah, I guess I moved Montreal below them, but I've moved another team above them. Um, yeah, I it was hard. I could have pushed them down one and kept Montreal above them. I that loss against Ottawa really sort of did it for me. And at the end of the day, Vancouver did beat two of the teams they should beat. So um, but yeah, I don't really know where this team's going. I think management have lost the plot. They made a call on the coach, which agree with or disagree with. I guess they felt like they had to do something. Um, but it's going to be an interesting 12 months, that's for sure. Because what they do now is really, unless of course they win the draft lotto and get Bedard, and their whole fucking their whole franchise is
Yeah,
turned and everything changes. I think it's going to be a real tough 12 months for management,
yeah.
and it'll really test their skills.
Well, like I said off air, that I think they changed their coach now because they had a easy run with those 2 games, and then the Seattle game. Um, it's kind of one of the easier runs, and then before the break, so they could get those wins, kind of look good going in. Um, I think that was sort of pre-planned there. That's my suspicion. Um,
Trying to get
anyway,
people on the side of their management.
yeah, kind of make him not look as bad making that decision.
Yeah. All
Alrighty.
right. On to P26. I got these guys moving up a couple of spots. Um, Interestingly enough, they lose 3 games this week, but they had a really tough week and they still managed to pull 4 points from 4 games. So I got the San Jose Sharks moving up a couple of positions.
Yeah, that's what I've got as well. They don't move for me, but that's where I have them. You were a little bit lower on them last week than I was, but yeah, like you said, they had a hard week. They go
Yeah.
they go against Boston. They honestly don't concede that many shots against Boston. 22 to
Hmm.
18, but they lose 4-0. Then they OT loss against Detroit. They go and OT lose against Carolina, which is a great feat. And then on a back to back, they kind of take it to Pittsburgh. So they're playing better. They're looking better on ice as well, which is
Mhm.
another thing that they weren't doing at the start of the season. They're just looking better on ice.
Yeah, I mean, that they're they're competing, and I think that's pretty much all you can ask for out of this Sharks team, especially if you're management. Because for them, I think they're wanting their trade bait players to be performing as best as they can, so they can maximize um, their return and actually get people interested in taking them. And then the rest of them, it's trying to look at your future. What players do we have here that we can start to build around? Because it is pretty obvious that they're going to have to do a rebuild. Um, but the big question for them would be, who are those players that we've got to rebuild around? Um, they're going to get some serious assets from moving the likes of Timo Meyer, Eric Carlson, if they can, and potentially a Logan Couture. Um, but yeah, it'll really start to come around with who do we have who's going to step into that those roles when we move those players on, that we can start this rebuild, or do they need to just to start fresh and bring in some new young faces
Mm.
in this upcoming draft?
No, they've been competing at the high end for a few seasons, honestly. So this downfall was kind of expected. It'll take a few
I was
years.
going to happen.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, they are where they are. It's kind of expected. Um, and they're just going to make the best of a bad situation with contracts like the Eric Carlson contract. But he's having a stellar season in regards to points anyway.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think if he was $3 million cheaper, oh my god, the haul that they would get for that man would be phenomenal.
yeah, man, it just comes down to signing good contracts. That's part of being a GM.
Mm,
Already,
for sure.
P25 for me, team that drops down a bit, down 4 positions. It's the St. Louis Blues.
Hey, get around it. St. Louis.
Yeah, they go 0-3 this week. They start their week losing to Buffalo, 5-3. They get shut out 5-0 against Arizona, which is the big telling game, and then they lose
Yep.
4-2 to Colorado, in what was somewhat of a close game, I think. But it's yeah, like I think the Arizona game was very telling, and I think they've been going from 25 to 20 for the last few weeks now, and it kind of seems to be the thing that they keep on doing. So I think they might stay down here if they keep like especially if they make these trades that are possibly going to come ahead with some of the key players. So I don't even see their team getting even a better at the trade deadline. So it could be 25 or lower from here on.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. If you look at where are like how far are they out of the wild card? They're about 8 points out of wild card position now. So you look at that and you go, that's not terrible, and that's not too far away. But I just can't see this team turning it around. And you got to think, if this team was to turn it around, they've got to keep the likes of Ryan O'Reilly and Vladimir Tarasenko if they're going to make a run for the playoffs. But you're 8 points out. You're 32 games to go. Yeah, I don't think it gets any better for this side. Especially, you look at their last 4 games. Yep, Colorado, and yep, you lost to Buffalo, two good teams. But you got smacked by Arizona and you got beaten by Chicago. It's just not happening for them, and you need to take what you can get for those two in Ryan O'Reilly and Tarasenko. Otherwise, it's going to set your, unless of course Ryan O'Reilly for some reason decides he wants to stay in St. Louis and resigns. Um, it's going to be two big assets lost for nothing if they attempt to make a run of this.
Yep, I agree.
All right. At P24. A team that doesn't move, for me, they stay right where I think they probably belong, and they'll be for probably the rest of the season. Philadelphia Flyers.
Yeah, I haven't moved on them either. I still have them at 24 as well.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have a great week. They didn't have a terrible week. It's just one of those things that, they play a lot of hard teams.
Yeah, no,
They take
they had a
4
rough week.
points.
They had a rough week in regards to schedule.
Well, oh, exactly, right? They played 4 games. They've played 12 games in the last 3 weeks, which is big. Um, and they had to play Winnipeg, LA Kings, Minnesota, and Winnipeg, and they take 4 points. So I think it's a good week. Um, but I just didn't see them moving in front of anyone else.
Yeah, the thing I like with them is they seem to be competing in every game, even against the big teams.
Mhm.
Even somewhat outplaying some of the big teams, but they're just not getting the results. Um, some of the OT games, obviously, that I consider those draws. You can win or lose that just on a fluke, really. But it's um it's the difference between them and pretty much everyone below them is that they're competing.
The
And
compete level, which I
yeah,
think that's the Tortorella effect, isn't it?
yeah,
Like you have to compete. If you don't compete, it's the Kevin Hayes situation.
yeah,
It's you don't compete, you're on the bench, and that sends a huge message. I know a lot of people were like, what's he doing? But there's a reason why they compete just about every game. That's
yeah.
the reason why their players are so they're putting in the effort.
My argument against the Kevin Hayes situation is the problem with doing that is it hurts your assets in regards to trade value, but it does make you compete better as a team, keeps everyone accountable. That's what I like to see in regards to teams. I think star players get away with too much in regards to how much they don't compete on all ends of the ice, and
For sure.
I think that's what Philly are doing. I think there'll probably be a team that upsets a team going for the wild card for the playoff spot. Honestly, with the way they're competing, I reckon they're gonna snipe a team out in regards to just they don't
Yeah,
make it. Yeah,
100%. They're going to be that team. Not to mention, they're going to be that team that physically. I'm not going to say physically harms a team, but like they play such a physical brand of hockey that they're going to just beat on a team that's sort of pushing for that playoff spot, and it's going to roll over. Like they're going to go, oh, and then they're just going to go on a losing streak because half their team are battered and bruised from the Philadelphia game. Um, it's just they've got their compete level and their physicality is going to be something that teams just aren't going to want to play as they're getting. It'll be good preparation for playoffs in a sense, but if you're trying to push and get into that playoff spot, you're not wanting to go into a game, get absolutely battered and bruised, and then have to be, fighting to win the next 2 or 3 games after in such a tight schedule after the All Stars break as well. Um, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they can do for the rest of the season. They're not going to make playoffs, but I reckon they'll take great pride in screwing a few teams over.
yeah. Well, they're in the Metro, so they'll probably snipe a Metro team. Um, On to pick number 23. I have team not moving. It's the Detroit Red Wings, and yeah, it's just been a little fluctuating season for them this season. They didn't have a bad week by all measures. Winning two, losing one, but the two wins were OT wins against some of the lower teams in Sharks and Canadians. And then they go and lose on a back-to-back 0-2 to the Islanders. So I don't rate those wins, but I rate them as draws, and I think they outplayed Montreal quite heavily, but conceding three on 23 shots, it's not the best. And I just don't know what to make of this team. Like sometimes they 1 week they'll show up, 1 week they won't. But this is kind of the results they're expected to get for the week.
Yeah, I think if you're a Detroit fan, you're probably disappointed in how this season sort of panned out. I think at the start of the season they were pretty hopeful that they'd be competing for a wild card spot. Um, Probably not expecting to necessarily get it, but definitely be competing for it. And I just don't think that's going to happen. They're 7 points out at the moment, but I just don't see how they get close to teams like Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Washington, New York Islanders, or Florida. I just can't see it.
It would have to be
Um,
a Usman trade, really. That's the only thing I can think of.
that would turn it around. Yeah, but then you've got to question: do you do that? Given the given the UFA status, they've got to look at re-signing and stuff. Are they really going to bring in a player? Yeah, so I think there'll be more sellers at the deadline than buyers. Um, and I'm not saying Dylan Larkin is that player that they're going to sell. I think he stays. I think they give him 9 mil and he stays. I think he'd be stupid not to. Um, but yeah, I think we could see them move on a few other players who are UFAs at the end of the season.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Alrighty, 22.
All right, 22. I love moving these guys up because I actually really do like watching them play. I enjoy the hockey they're playing. I've said it time and time again. It's their defense and their goaltending that's an issue. But if they can fix that, I've got really high hopes for them. It's the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, I've got them in the same position, moving up 4 positions. You moving up 3.
Yeah, I think I enjoy watching these guys play. I think these guys. I think Ottawa, Buffalo, um, in terms of their offensive power. I think they're just fantastic to watch. I just think Ottawa's biggest issue is their defense, and their goaltending at the moment. But they're fantastic to watch. They're fun to watch. They're fast.
Hmm.
Um, it's just they're not able to. It's been the problem all season. They just can't string together wins back to back to back, or go on a 5 game winning streak and then lose one game and then go back to winning. It's always they'll win a few and then they'll lose a few, and then they'll win a few and then they'll lose a few. And yeah, I just it's not quite there yet, but I think it's definitely coming for them.
Yeah, it's a roller coaster of a season. Like they beat the Islanders 2-1, beat the Leafs 6-2, which amazing. Then on the back to back, they go and shut out 5-0 the Canadians. So they beat a Metro team 2-1 in a close game, but then they go and basically feed off the other Canadian teams, and a really good win against the Leafs, which they would have loved to do against a Canadian rival. It's like I said, they're just not stringing those wins. They got 3 out of 3 this week, but if history repeats, they'll probably go and lose all 3 next week. That's kind of how their season's been. So I'm interested to see what they do next week, or if this is the start of something, or if it's just the same old business as usual.
Yeah,
Or
I don't think they'll turn it around too much. But I think we'll continue to see them fluctuate. I think the main focus here is just seeing the youngsters improve, maybe fixing some issues in their game. But as for the defense and goaltending, I think you've got to do something come free agency. I think that's the only way they're going to fix it. Um, and then obviously you've got a couple of young lads in Sanderson, um, who are just going to get better as they play more hockey. So I think for the rest of it, it's just about getting some game time into those players, um, and then yeah, looking to see what they can do in the postseason. Sorry, the off season, and yeah, and then start again next year, and hopefully they'll be able to sort of pull it together well enough to be competing for the wild card spot next year.
alrighty, P21 for me. You got the New York Islanders, team that pretty much had a meh week, but they move up 1 position for me. Um, I think it was on regards to just St. Louis crashing. that was basically it. Otherwise, they were flat for the week. They go 2 out of 4. They lose 5-2 to Toronto, 2-1 to Ottawa. Then they go and beat 2-0 Detroit, and then on the back-to-back 2-1 OT win against Vegas, which is the standout game for the week. It's I still don't think they have enough there. I will say, besides the Toronto game, they do well for the next 3 games. They didn't concede that many goals. 1, 0, and 1. That's what you like to see. But
True.
I just don't think they're there. I'm still lacking things on the ice there to be considering them any higher.
100%. I think this month has really proven it. But before the weekend, before the Detroit and Vegas back-to-back wins, they only had 2 wins for this month. 2 wins. And they've played 15 games now, and they've got 4 wins for the month. They're 4-11 in
Hmm.
terms of win-loss, and
Yeah,
they won their last 2. So it just shows you how bad they're getting. And yep, okay, they've come up against some really good teams, but at the same time, um, they're losing to they lost to Ottawa. I know Buffalo's been on a tear, but they lost to Buffalo, lost to Calgary, lost to Edmonton. They've had a tough month, and I get that, but you've got to be winning more than 4 of 11 to be making playoffs. And the Islanders are supposed to be that team. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think they're an interesting team when it comes to what next, because if they don't make it this year, I don't see how they get better next year.
yeah. No, they've kind of dug themselves a hole. It was make or break, and I think they're breaking.
Hmm.
Um, and that's where they're at.
For sure,
On to
for sure.
P20.
All right, P20. Yeah, these guys that they were sort of improving, but hit a bit of a snag this week, until they beat Boston, which is a feat that only a few teams can say this year. I've got the Florida Panthers.
Yeah,
They don't move for me.
I don't have them moving either. Got them in the same spot.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. The win against Boston was great, and they have been in better form. Um, but I don't know. I don't like what I'm seeing from them. I, you know, uh, besides the last 3 seconds, with 3 seconds to go, they were losing that game against Boston. They tie it up with 3 seconds to go, and then they win it in overtime. Um, yeah,
It
I
kind of sugarcoats how bad of a week and how bad they're actually playing. Um,
yeah.
yeah, and like that's probably why we don't move on them. Otherwise, they probably do move lower. I do think teams like Ottawa are probably playing better. I'd even argue even to the Islanders. It's just consistency, where they're at, how they've played throughout the season, and yeah, I'm like you said, I'm not liking how they're playing, where they're at. I think they need a coaching change, set it all season, and I can't see them going anywhere higher than 20. Honestly, it's a it's a myth to me. If you have them any higher, really, in your power rankings, I couldn't see it.
Yeah, yeah, neither can I. I don't know how you'd have them above, some of the teams we've still got to come, like Nashville, Calgary, Pittsburgh, like all of those guys. And just having a look at my previous rankings last week.
Yeah,
Um,
same as mine.
and yeah, and I get that, Pittsburgh's been up and down, but how much do you put on Florida's recent form? Because before that, they'd pretty much gone 2 wins, 1 loss in a week, 2 wins, 2 losses in a week, 3 wins, 1 loss in a week, and then they've gone 1-3. So they're pretty much 50-50 this
Mm.
this entire month. Yeah, I don't know. I think that if any team was going to pull it together and make the playoffs and make a run, this team definitely could do it. They won the President's Trophy last year. You can't write them off. But I think we need to see more,
I
and
gotta,
we need to
I
see it
got,
on
I
a
agree with
more
that.
consistent
I've written them
basis.
off honestly. I would, they
Oh,
don't have the coaches there. And that's the thing for me.
that's a massive call.
No, no,
That is a massive call.
I've written them off. I don't think they
No,
have it. Um,
I don't blame you. I
mm.
haven't liked what I've seen, and I do agree with you. But at the same time, they could pull a coach change, right?
Oh no, no, I'm saying
And that could
if
change
they make
everything.
no changes now, I don't see them doing it. If they make a coaching change, they can definitely do it. But until I see a change, I don't see them doing it. But on to
Uh,
P19. Team moving down a couple of positions. I got the Pittsburgh Penguins,
Yeah,
and
me too.
yeah, it's a this is flopping around. Really, that they win one, they lose three this week. They OT against Devils. They 7-6 OT win against the Panthers. They shootout lose to the Capitals, and then they 4-6 lose to the Sharks. It's the disgusting one is the Florida Panther one. I don't like that. I
Mhm.
don't like high scoring games like that. And sure they get the win in OT, but it doesn't look good. I don't think they looked almighty great against the Devils, and they lose that in OT. They go to shootout against the Washington, who I don't think have been looking that great, and then they lose to Sharks, who have looked better, but they should be beating. So it's very disappointing.
Yeah, I think it's that. Yeah, it's always concerning when you concede 6 goals. It's never good, but as long as it doesn't happen on a regular basis, you take the one off. Um, they took it to OT against the Devils and shootout against Washington. Um, but it's that San Jose one for me. They win that game. They take 6 points from the week, and all of a sudden it's uh, 6 out of a possible 8. That's not terrible. Um, but yeah, it's dropping points against teams they shouldn't be dropping points against. Um, they took it to OT against the Devils in Washington, which is what you want. If you're going to lose to your division rivals, you want to at least take a point, and they did that. But then they lose to a team that they should be beating, and they concede 6 goals against them. So it's twice in a week they concede 6 goals. Um, yeah, it is a bit concerning for them, and with how tight the East is, they they'd want to pull it together.
Hmm. Alrighty, yeah,
All
P18.
right, P18. Double check this. Yeah, okay. They don't move for me. I got the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, that's the same for me. No movement for Calgary Flames this week.
Yeah, I know they've been playing better. I kind of felt like that's why I had to double check. Maybe I've been sleeping on them, but yeah, I think that loss against Chicago really summed it up for me. They get 2 wins, but they lose 5-1 to Chicago. That just that's disgusting.
Yeah, and I didn't like the Columbus game. Like they dominated, but it still went to OT.
Mhm.
And that's what concerned me. And then, like you said, they go lose to Chicago, and then they do the opposite. They lose to Chicago, a team they should beat. Then they beat a team in Seattle Kraken that they should lose to on a back to back. And they win
Yes.
5-2. So I think they're playing better. Um, I just need to see a little bit better results. I think they're playing better on ice. Just need to see better results to move them up.
For sure. I think that in in the conference or division they're in, they're a great chance to make playoffs. And that's the thing that they can hold there or look forward to. But the thing is, if you're going to lose to teams like Chicago, that's going to quickly be taken away from you. So yeah, they're better. They're doing a lot better, but they've still got a lot of work to do. That's for sure.
Alrighty. Team just outside the top 16. The last one outside the top 16 at P17. A team dropping out. It is the Washington Capitals for me. Um,
Oh,
it's
you
not that
did
they,
it. You,
yeah,
you did it.
it's not that they had a hard week. I'm interested to see where you put them. You kept them in at 16, I see. Uh,
I was tempted. I was definitely tempted. I know what you've done, and I was definitely tempted to do the same.
Yeah, it's just they go. They only play 2 games this week, so small sample size. They lose to Colorado, 3-2. Then the shootout win against Pittsburgh. It's not a bad week at all. I don't think they've been playing great though for probably 3 or 4 weeks. This has probably been 50-50 of how I've seen it on ice and in results. And that's why I've just moved them down. It's just because other teams I feel like are playing better hockey on ice and getting better results.
Yeah, and I fully get that. That's why I was sort of teetering on whether or not I'd make that call of pushing them out of the top 16 because the team I've got below them, they're definitely playing some really nice hockey. And probably well deserved of moving into that top 16. I think it was just that sample size. They got the win against Pittsburgh. They played reasonably well against Colorado, just just falling short. So I sort of just held on to that 16 position just that week longer. But they've got 2 games before the break, and that could definitely make or break their top 16
Mm.
status.
Alrighty, on to your 17, which will probably be my 16 then.
Yeah, I'd say so, unless you've really moved on these guys. But they're playing some really good hockey. So yeah, Nashville Predators.
Yeah, that's my 16.
They're definitely well deserved. I can't argue with putting them in the top 16. I was definitely thinking about it. They only had the 2 games this week as well. But 2 really good teams in Winnipeg and New Jersey, and they got the job done against both of them. But it's not just this week. They've been playing pretty well for a little while now. And they're on the way up, and they're definitely going to be scaring a few teams in the West, especially in those wildcard spots.
Yeah, I'm just liking what I'm seeing on the ice compared to Washington. That was the big tipper for me. I just
Yeah.
think they're playing way better, and I fear coming up against Nashville more than I do Capitals at this current moment. Um, though I don't know if that will stay true to the end of the season. And like you said, they had hard week in regards to Winnipeg and New Jersey, and they played a really good game against both. Having 41 shots in both games, so 2 teams that can defend well, um, and they're getting 41 shots. So I haven't seen anything really that I've really stuck out to me as a big flaw for them in the past few weeks. So I'm interested to see if they can continue it though, because we have been high on them before, then they've crashed. They have done
And then
that.
yeah, exactly. And that's probably where I sort of held on as well. But no, you're right. Like they've got a pretty solid all round team. So I'm very interested to see if they can keep going with this push. Um, I think they got a little bit lucky in the Devils game, and potentially the Winnipeg one as well. Like Winnipeg have been on a bit of a slide, so they probably got him at the right time. And it was probably one of the worst games I've seen the Devils play all year, honestly, against Nashville. Um, but in saying that, um, the Predators did cause a lot of that with their relentless pressure, their speed that they used at times, and they just defended the slot really well. They didn't allow. There were a lot of shots on goal, and I get that there was 10 goals in the game. Um, but I felt like Nashville really did defend quite well. And the goals that the Devils did get, it just came from pure skill. And was a credit to the Devils' skill more than Nashville's poor defense. I thought they played really well and sort of they broke the Devils down quite well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Alrighty. P15 for me. Team dropping off the face of the earth. I got the Vegas Golden Knights.
He's you were so much higher on these guys. I know I've sort of been hating on them for a little bit with my
Only
rankings,
only 2
but
positions. I wouldn't say so much, but yeah.
yeah, but I think the week before that they were probably another 2 positions ahead of that.
Yeah.
It's been coming for a while, but yeah, we're finally on even terms with these guys, and yeah, I think it's definitely deserved. They've fallen off the face of the earth. You said it, 100%.
Yeah, well, they go 0-4. Only points they get against New Jersey and New York Islanders in OT losses. Big lose against at the start of the week to the Arizona Coyotes, who have been average, and then against the better teams, they've kind of looked average as well against Devils, the Rangers, and the Islanders. Though I'd say they probably did play a little bit better than the Islanders in that game. But 45 shots, you're only scoring one goal. That's somewhat on you as well, and what shots you're putting on net. Though I believe it's Sorokin, if I'm not getting it wrong, has been
Yeah,
outstanding.
sorry.
I don't know if he played in net that game, but he has been outstanding.
No, it was Varlamov, but
Hmm.
yeah, you're
Oh,
not wrong. Sorokin has been phenomenal.
yeah, Varlamov actually hasn't been too bad either. Um, from the games I've seen, but
Oh, it's
yeah,
definitely a good goalie tandem.
I just like what do you say? This is just a falling off the face of the earth type of week, and you have to demote almost outside the top 16, and that's probably wholeheartedly deserved.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it's with the All Star break, it's hard to see they don't play a game this week coming up, but um, yeah, I don't know if they'll fall out. I'd have to check the schedule to see what the Capitals and Predators and that are doing. But yeah, I mean they've got to turn it around some point. They had an easy draw, which I touched on. I've touched on a lot. Their draw has been relatively easy, and that's why I think they were where they were for so long. Um, and it's sort of falling apart for them a little bit. Jack Eichel's gone really cold all of a sudden. Um, I'm not saying they can't turn it around. I still think they are a playoff side, especially in the West. But yeah, they're gonna have to do something.
Alrighty, P14 for you.
All right, P14 for me. Team they didn't play too much this week, and they had a bit of a 50-50 week. But they move up one position because they're Vegas, and it's the Edmonton Oilers.
Alrighty. I was obviously higher on them last week at P12. I moved them up to P11. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the Vegas,
That's the
the
Vegas.
Vegas
It's
move.
it's the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. For me, it was hard. I know they've been on a bit of a winning streak. 6 games in a row, but they lose to Columbus, and I get it's in OT, but that's a team that especially with their firepower, they should be ripping that team to shreds. Um, I just don't quite get how they lost that game. Um, if they win that game and make it 8 straight, especially with the Chicago win, potentially they go up a couple of spots. But yeah, for me, I couldn't really move them. It was only due to the Vegas fall off that they move up a position this week. I still want to see more.
Yeah. Well, 2 games. I wasn't moving up or down on them, but because Vegas fell off, they move up. They have secretly gone on the radar of just good results though. Like
Mhm.
what they're let's have a look here. 1 game behind Winnipeg, but only 3 points behind. They've got 2 games above Minnesota, but they're 2 points ahead. They're 7-1-2 in the last 10. I think that they're looking better than what they were, but we've said it all season. The gripes with what's with their team, whether they fix that this trade deadline or not, will be interesting. But I think they've just been secretly just notching up here and there, and that's why I'm at 11 with them at the moment. I could have them at 12, swapping with another team. It was honestly just a coin flip, really, what I did with that.
Yeah, that's fair. I just feel like they feed really well off of the West, and off of those bottom teams. Like you look at the last. Don't get me wrong, they've also got good wins in there, but yeah, Anaheim, San Jose, Vegas, who have sort of fallen off the face of the earth, Vancouver, Chicago. That's 5 of their last 7 wins. And the two teams that are obviously quality, Seattle and Tampa Bay. and Seattle and Tampa Bay were in back to backs, both of them. So I still have my reservations about them because of their defense, depending so much on Skinner as well, and depending pretty much on that top line. They've got the firepower. I wouldn't doubt that they're going to make the playoffs, especially in that West. But I definitely do still have reservations on them.
No, I think those reservations are definitely earned already. Onto my P14, I have a team that's just upped a little bit. It's the Buffalo Sabres. Just moving on.
Yeah, I'm not too much higher. I'm only one position up.
Yeah, well, you were a little bit lower or something. Oh no, you just etched them a little bit higher. Moving up 3, and I moved up 2. They go 3-1 this week. They start their week off OT win against Dallas, back to back. St. Louis they win. Uh, Winnipeg Jets they win, and then Minnesota Wild they lose in shootout today. So hard schedule, and they come out with pretty much maximum points besides one, which is really insane. And it has been proved, showing what they're putting on ice is coming into results now, and they're not conceding a massive amounts of goals, which I had gripes with earlier in the season, which was good to see. So I definitely moved them up, and I can see them definitely moving up higher next week if they continue. If they have any more games, actually, if they
Sure.
have any more games.
They play Carolina
Okay.
midweek. So yeah, they only play 2 games over the next 2 weeks. So yeah, it'll be interesting. But hey, look, they played 3 back-to-backs in 3 weeks. So it's been a tough schedule for them, and they've played some really strong sides as well, and they've still been getting results. So I definitely have them as a very good chance to pinch one of those wild card spots off of a Washington or a Pittsburgh.
Yeah, well, especially
All
with the way
right.
they've been playing.
Yeah, for sure. All right. In P12, I've got the Colorado Avalanche.
Alrighty. They are my P12. So this was a team that whoops, that's the wrong one.
Well,
Yeah,
that's a
this
big drop.
yeah, that's a big drop. Yeah, this is the team that I flipped a coin basically with the Oilers, and I could have them above the Oilers at 11. Um, I
Mhm.
think I think they're playing good hockey, and I'm liking what they're seeing.
Yeah, no, they had the little slip up against Anaheim, but they've won. What are we to 7 out of the last 8 games? Um, I I don't think you can doubt them, right? Like I think we all know that they're coming. We all know that they'll make the playoffs. Um, and it's just a question of how healthy and fit they're going to be come playoff time. But some of their players, given the issues they've had through the year, if they can get enough ice time into them right before playoffs, they're going to be fresh and ripe to go. Um, and if they can get that second line center that everyone's talking about for them, they're definitely going to be gearing up for a back to back. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, they had a good week. Beating the Capitals. The reason Anaheim was the big game that was very disappointing, and then they go and beat St. Louis. So that's kind of where I flipped with the Edmonton one was that they lost to Anaheim this week. But I feel like they're outplaying every team they come up against. They're looking like the Colorado that dominated last year, especially like McKinnon's playing great, and yeah, it's frightening. But anyway, on to P13 for me. I have the LA Kings. Moving up 2 positions for me.
Yeah, you were a little bit lower on them last week than I was. I've got
Mm.
them at 11. I'm liking what I'm seeing from them, to be honest. They
Yeah,
they they turned it back around.
yeah. Well, the thing for me, like they go 3-1 this week. They beat Chicago. They OT win against Philly, and then they beat Florida. Then on a back-to-back, they lose to Tampa, which is always a hard one. The thing for me is that two of them, the Chicago and Philly, I feel were almost guaranteed. Um, sure, Philly are putting up fights, so they go to OT. The Florida game, they scraped through, honestly, with a 4-3 win, though Florida was playing really good that game. And then the back-to-back Tampa, it's hard to judge that one because it's a back-to-back against, one of the top 4 or 5 best teams in the league. So yeah, I move them up. I can't move them up any higher, unfortunately, just for now.
No, that's fair. I think yeah, like they've been sort of hit and miss. I thought very early on, they were getting results, but it was ugly. I think they still can play ugly hockey at times, but they've looked a lot better. Um, so yeah, I think I'm holding them a little bit higher at the moment, but definitely with some of the firepower below them, if they don't keep it up, they could very well end up right back down. But,
Well,
all right,
it looks like 11 onwards is all the same. That's good though. So now we're in top
yeah, it
10.
looks like I was going to say our top 10 are not necessarily in the same order, but they're all the same teams. So at least we can agree on something. All right. So yeah, 10 I've got coming in. They don't move at all. Didn't really like what I saw from them, but they also got the results. So it's hard to really move them down, and I couldn't really move them up. It's the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, they move up for me, just because of the Vegas, and that was pretty much it, for me. But they didn't have a bad week, winning 2 out of 3, and the big one loss was to Tampa, which is one of the better teams. But then they did beat Philly and Buffalo, both in extra time though. So there wasn't dominating wins, which concerned me.
No, I feel like they got outplayed. Um, in the Philly game, and I feel like they got outplayed a little bit in the Buffalo game. Not as much. It was relatively even, but yeah, I think that was my only concern. Is I've just, especially the 3 games prior to that, I feel like they're getting outplayed, and something's not quite clicking. Um, they've fallen out of the playoff spot, which is even crazier to think. Um, but I still do think that. Oh no, wait, sorry, the win today pushed them back in, but only just. They did fall out of the playoff spot for a moment there. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I still think they're an absolute powerhouse if they can get it right. But yeah, they've fallen off just a little bit.
Alrighty, on to P9. My P9, I have a team falling off just a little bit. Is the Winnipeg Jets.
I honestly could have dropped them even further, to be honest, but I settled for 2.
Yeah, it was a big debate this one, and like, look, they go beat Philly at the start of the week. They lose to Nashville, who's been good. They lose to Buffalo, who's also been good, and then they go and lose 4-0 to Philly. After in the same week, beating them, and sure their losses weren't big, losing by 1 goal each game except the Philly, but that it says a lot, that Philly game. They didn't look good in the Buffalo game, and they got outplayed in Nashville. So they're getting outplayed, honestly. I feel like in pretty much all games this week, maybe besides the one they won, and
Yeah.
it kind of is reminiscent of the old Jets on how they played. So that's what worries me.
Yeah, it was a little bit concerning. And I think the other concerning part was that win, they were 3-0 up, and they coughed that 3-0 lead up. And luckily they got away with it. But yeah, I'd want to see them turn it around quick, smart. Otherwise, it could get a little bit hairy. They've got a good side, but we do know that their defense can be questionable at times. And if their forwards aren't firing, yeah, things can get bad.
Alrighty,
Right.
P8.
Moving on to P8. I got a team. They don't move this week. They played pretty well. I'm still pretty high on them, but I just couldn't move them up or down this week. So it's Seattle Kraken.
Yeah, it's where I have them as well. So far, that's the same top 10. And
That's a good start. I think they just had a softish week.
in regards to schedule, yeah.
Vancouver.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vancouver, Columbus, and Calgary, and they lose to Calgary. So they didn't really put too much behind the wins against Vancouver or Columbus, and the loss against Calgary. Yeah, it's just one of those things that I think I still rate Seattle. Their goaltending worries me. Luckily, I think their defense is pretty solid, which helps that. But yeah, just in terms of where I think they're at, I think there are a few teams ahead of them are just a little bit more potent at the moment.
Mm. No, I agree. I don't really have much more to say, honestly, with the saddle. I think it's the same as always, the way they've been playing for the last few weeks. So I guess I'll just move on to P7, team that's
So,
moving up quite a bit. So the New York Rangers.
yeah, I I hate saying it as a Devils fan, but this is I really like this team.
Yeah. No,
I
no,
hope they don't win the Stanley Cup, obviously.
no. I really
But
like the players they have on the team. Honestly, Zibanejad's one of my favorites. Panarin always makes the game exciting. And they score goals, which is good. Like they defeat Florida 6-2. They go to OT against the Leafs and lose it, and then they defeat Vegas 4-1. So they're scoring goals. They look good on ice. I think they've got good depth. They got good goaltending. It seems to be clicking now. They've been kind of at that 10 mark or just outside for a while. So this is probably what highest they've been in probably a month or so, and it's good to
probably
see,
all year, to
honestly.
be honest.
Yeah, maybe all
But
year, but yeah,
yeah, I definitely think they're one hell of a dangerous team, especially with one of the best goalies in the league in net in Shesterkin. Halak's been an improvement as well, which has contributed to their success. Him finally pulling wins and playing better has definitely helped. Um, but yeah, I you wouldn't want to play him in the playoffs. That's all I can say.
yeah,
And as it stands, New Jersey are playing them round one if playoffs started today. So
that'd be an
that
amazing
would be
series.
insane. That would be an incredible series. But all right, moving on. P6. I, they went 0-3 this week, and I could have dumped them down the rung, but it was a tough draw, and they still walk out of this week with 3 points. I got the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, I've done the exact same. I think our thought process is exactly the same on this one. Um, they've just been better than the other teams consistently. So
Yeah.
they're higher in the standings easily. So they can afford this slide. But like you said, this slide, three hard teams, and they all go to OT, so they draw.
And
Um,
they still go 500. Like,
so,
they
so
still
yeah,
go 500.
and
Yeah.
that's what you need to make the playoffs. That's what you need to compete. That's why I couldn't move on them. I do think Rangers are kind of knocking on the door there with them, but yeah, I need to see what happens next week and onwards because yeah, I couldn't move them up. Or definitely couldn't move them up, but I couldn't move them down.
Yeah, 100%. I just, you look at the three games and yeah, okay, they take 3 L's, but they take 3 points from that. But it's not just that, it's also on top of it, it's the way they play. And like watching those three games, they were still probably the better team in all three games, or at least the better team in at least half of the game. So there were patches and periods where they dominated, they controlled the games, but they couldn't get it done. And you're playing three relatively good teams. Carolina's got one of the best defenses in the game. New Jersey Devils are, that they had 35 shots against the Devils, and the Devils are what, fourth in the league or third in the league for shots against. Um, they don't concede a lot of shots against. And then yeah, Buffalo's firepower and all the rest of it. So yeah, I think the way they're playing and the way they are on ice, taking the 3 points from this week would probably have been a disappointment for them, but I don't see it as a bad thing because I still think they were really, they played really, really well.
Alrighty, on to the top five. Starting with the top five, a team that doesn't move for me, I have the Toronto Maple Leafs. Um, yeah, I just don't think they've done enough to move in to the top four. They do go 2 out of 3 this week, and they beat the Islanders. They beat the Rangers in OT, but then the big one is they lose 6-2 to Ottawa. And that's what really just keeps them at 5 for me. I couldn't move them up. I think the other teams above them are just playing better hockey on ice and getting better results at the same time.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I still think they are, a really deadly team. But I think lately we've probably seen a bit of a slip in terms of their goalie tandem. I think we've seen a few games there where both their goalies in Murray and Samsonov have been questionable. So that's definitely some cause for concern. Um, but look, they're going to be there. They're probably going to be second or third in the Atlantic. And the big question for them is, can they get past Tampa? Um, it's pretty much set in stone. I can't see either of them catching Boston, and I can't see either of them moving out of the top three. So the question is, can Toronto beat Tampa?
Well, they got a
That is
lot.
their
They got a
biggest
lot of
test.
time to study Tampa's game. I'll say that. They got a lot of time
Well,
before the playoffs to study their game and work something out.
yeah, I know you shouldn't get too far ahead of yourself, and Buffalo are coming, but I just don't see Buffalo making up 9 points and snatching a top three, and I don't see Toronto or Tampa Bay catching Boston. So yeah, you shouldn't get too far ahead of yourself, but you're pretty much playing Tampa at this
Mm.
point.
Well,
Um,
but they got the money, so they could delegate a team to just researching Tampa.
for sure.
Alrighty, you're
All
number
right,
4.
moving into top four. Now they had a reasonably good week, but I'm getting a little bit concerned with and it's great. Don't get me wrong, comeback kings these guys apparently, but I would like to see them winning games from the front rather than from behind for once. So they moved down one this week for me. It's the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah, I've done the same thing, based on the same thought process. It's just the comeback kings, but they shouldn't have to be the comeback kings, really, should they?
No,
They go what 3 out of 4 games this week. Go to OT. They win OT against Pittsburgh, Vegas. They lose in regulation against Nashville. Then they win in OT against Dallas on the back to back. And I don't think they're outplaying their opponents at this point, but they're not getting outplayed. It's kind of 50-50 from what I've seen. I think they've lacking a little bit defensively in their gaps compared to what they were doing at the
they
start
need
of the
Marino
season.
back.
And yeah,
Yeah,
that's basically it. Probably like one of the guys leading the Norris, and yeah, he's out. So yeah, that's what happens. But they're still great week. It's just concerning how they're getting those wins.
yeah. I mean, you look at their last, what is it? 5 of their last 6 games have been taken to OT, and besides the Dallas game, 4 of those games, Dallas and Nashville, obviously, 4 of those games required an empty net goal. The Nashville game, they actually score an empty net goal to make it 4-5, and unfortunately, a goal with the net goalie pulled, and yeah, they make it 4-5 and just can't get the go ahead goal or the game tying goal. But yeah, that Nashville game was disgusting. That was probably the worst game I've seen them play all year. Nashville played really well to their credit and probably was most of the reason for it. But yeah, from a defensive standpoint, that was disgusting. Um, but yeah, there are some concerns around always going behind by a goal or two and having to pull it back. So I think, yeah, they got a few things to address, but they're sitting pretty good right now. Their last 10 is the best in the league at 8-1-1. They're 6 points clear of third in the Metro. So, yeah, I mean, it's all looking pretty good for the Devils at the moment.
Alrighty. On to number 3. The team that leapfrogging for me is the Tampa Bay Lightning. Um, I'll see where you put them. I think you've gone 3
We
as
may,
well.
we
And
may actually go a perfect top 10 here.
I was thinking that
I
I was
actually think
thinking that
this
at
is on
number
the
5.
cards.
I think um yeah, the only reason they leapfrog New Jersey is I think they're just looking a bit better on the ice in the past week or so, and they're just getting the results done in regulation. They go 3-0 this week, defeating the Wild. They beat Boston, and then they beat LA somewhat comfortably. But like they're just looking really, really good, really solid. They're just playing that little bit better on ice and getting that better results on ice as well, and that's why they leapfrog New Jersey, even though they didn't have a bad week. They're definitely coming. If I'm a Toronto fan, I'm worried. You're just hoping they're peaking early, and yeah, I think it's a pretty comfortable number 3 for me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, you sort of got to get rewarded when you're one of only two teams to beat Boston in regulation. um, yeah, they're a powerhouse. They're going to compete again this year, which is insane. Um, and it's terrifying, like you said, for if you're a Toronto fan, knowing that you're most likely having to go up against these guys again. Um, maybe maybe they tire out, and that's the only thing that I can sort of give a little bit of hope for Toronto. Maybe by the time playoffs come around, they're knackered and they fail to turn up. But yeah, they are looking really good at the moment, and they're getting the W's, and that's all they've got to do.
Hmm. Alrighty, on to
All
P2
right.
to see if we keep this top 10 the same.
Well, I'd be very surprised if we don't, but who knows? Boston did have a bit of a hiccup this week. But look, I couldn't I couldn't punish Boston for that. So at number 2, I've got Carolina Hurricanes.
Yeah, it's what I've done as well, as much as I want to ruin the perfect top 10. Um, yeah, like you say,
Yeah.
they had a hiccup, but they go 500. Um, and if that's a hiccup, then I'll take that hiccup every day of the week. And
Oh
yeah,
yeah, 1 week at 500. Yeah, I know, right?
I know. What a shame. Fire the coach. Yeah, they beat San Jose and Montreal. Then they lose to Tampa, but then they actually lose to OT in OT against Florida. So they actually go slightly above 500, and that's a bad week for them. So
Mm.
yeah, no, it's what
Five
do you?
out of a possible 8, and
Yeah,
we're talking about a hiccup.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. But onto the
yeah, but
Carolina. Well, they've got a lot to make up. They only played 2 games this week. They versed Dallas and San Jose. Both games go to OT, which is kind of disappointing in regards to the San Jose game, even though San Jose is playing better. But they get the wins, and they're trying to chase down Boston. And with Boston's little hiccup, maybe they can do it. I'm not sure if you want
well,
to do it with the curse, but yeah,
They play Boston tomorrow, so
I don't
um,
I don't know if they want the President's Trophy. They probably just want the Division Trophy, but they're
yeah.
what 11 points behind Boston.
Yeah, I mean, right now, honestly, with some of the stuff that happens with the President's Trophy winner, I'd probably just take being top of the Metro, getting the second uh, worst wild card team. But yeah, look, maybe if Carolina beats Boston this week, you could consider a swap of that number 1, but Boston are just that far ahead at the moment. You look at their goal difference, 81, 81. The next closest is 40. Um, yeah, I like what Carolina are doing. I think they're a really strong side. I don't think they're quite at Boston's level just yet.
Well, there are only 2 teams to just flat out lose in single digits. Every other team's 12 or more. So Boston at 6, Carolina at 9, and I think that just extends to how hard they compete every game. Like they're there, they're always there, even when they're having an off night. They're somehow just like a goal behind, and then they equalize it or something like that. They go to OT. So I don't know if Carolina chase them down, especially with the San Jose game. And I didn't really see much in regards to dominating Dallas, but it is Dallas. But they get results. Definitely the two powerhouses of the year. I would actually probably throw Tampa and New Jersey in there. Maybe Toronto. Um, but I'd probably just throw Tampa in there. I think those three teams I almost guarantee lose if you're coming up against them.
Yeah. Yep. Have to agree. So yeah, I mean, we'll fill in that number one spot there with Boston.
Alrighty.
Uh, they they reign supreme yet again. Um,
Yeah, it's
and I just
never been out
can't see
double
it changing.
digits. No, never been double digits. Um, I don't know what they change. I don't know if they need to change anything. I don't know if you want to change anything to disrupt the chemistry. Maybe accidentally bring in a toxic player or something. Um, yeah, it's hard on the GM. It's hard on the coach to maintain this. I definitely think they have to start considering after this break, resting some of the star players just here and there, especially on those back to backs. Um, just making sure you're ironing out those little niggles and bruises that they might get up against teams like Philadelphia who do throw their body around.
Yeah, for sure. I think with some of the aging players as well, it would be a good idea. They're that far ahead. They're not going to lose first place by resting a couple of players here or there. So, I think right now they've got a playoff spot pretty much sewn up. Um, it would have to be one of the biggest. It would be the reverse St. Louis if they were to fall out of playoffs at this point. Um,
It would have to be
but
the
yeah, I
biggest
think
drop off in history, I think, because of how good they've played. Not just where they are,
oh,
it's just how
100%.
good they've played. If you dropped out of the playoffs now, that'd have to be the worst drop in history.
Oh, for sure. But yeah, I think with some of the players they've got in terms of Marchand, Bergeron, Foligno, Krejci, they're all, mid 30s. Um, I definitely feel like you've got to start resting a couple of those, and just getting them right for for um for playoffs. Because the worst thing that could happen to them is one or two of those guys get seriously injured and are on the LTIR for a month of playoffs, and you're like, okay, great, we've got one of our better players because we rode them too hard. Um, you've summed up the year perfectly. You're in the perfect position right now. Now you've just got to be thinking again. A lot of teams say we don't think too far ahead, but I've got to say, fuck that. You've got to start thinking playoffs because you're there. You are going to be in the playoffs. You need to make sure that you're going with a healthy lineup.
Mm. Alrighty. Well, I guess that ends it there. A good little solid top 10 to finish it off. A few hits and misses throughout the bottom and the middle. But please leave a comment, subscribe, and like the video if you liked it. In your comment, agree or disagree with either or power rankings. Let us know what your power rankings are and where you think we've gone right or wrong. And we'll see you guys next week or maybe earlier for any other videos we push out. Until then, catch you guys.
Thanks, guys. Take care.